So no matter where I go, I keep it local. And to me, that means like what I've been saying this whole hour, Kapwa, this idea of shared humanity, of interconnectedness. And I feel like growing up by my hippie dad and even my mother and having my ancestors with me, I have this idea of keeping it local, meaning keeping it for the community by the community.
That was Nicole Salaver, Program Director at Balai Creative. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco, a podcast about the artists, activists, and small businesses that make our city unlike any other. Before I get to this episode, I just want to share some of my thoughts about where things stand, both in the world and closer to home. It's been a bit of the elephant in the room last couple of weeks, ever since Election Day. Obviously, things didn't go the way I and probably a lot of you wanted things to go. Personally, I rode the roller coaster of emotions over a good part of the last couple weeks, and I'm feeling like I have gotten off that roller coaster, and I'm starting to get my footing. One thing I realized really quickly, maybe not really quickly, but after at least, 4 or 5 days, was that I want to turn all my attention toward San Francisco, especially the Bay Area and California, just things a little closer to home, things I'm definitely more connected to, you could say, than the rest of the country. Places where I know people, places where I am either part of or know about organizations that I believe are doing the right thing in face of everything else that's going on around us. So I mentioned some of this in my newsletter that went out last week. If you haven't signed up for that, please do. It's easy to do. Just go to our website, storiedsf.com, and you'll be prompted to sign up for the newsletter. I really think it's important to stay focused on what's around here. I think it's important to be part of communities that are around us, again, that are doing good stuff. It's been the mission of this podcast from day one to focus on artists, activists, and small businesses, and I'm just doubling down, and I hope you'll continue to stick with me and listen and learn, and most importantly, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to share these stories, to share resources, and to just continue to, more than keep each other afloat, is lift each other up. So, yeah. Okay, back to Nicole. In this episode, we learn all about Nicole and her husband's tumultuous return to California. It happened just as COVID was taking hold, and that informed a lot of the decisions as well as discoveries Nicole has undertaken. We pick up where we left off in part 1, with Nicole's move to New York shortly after her dad passed away. Here's the continuation of my chat with Nicole Salaver. So you didn't have anything lined up, and you didn't have, did you have a specific plan?
No.
It was more just general, like,
It was just,
this is where I need to be.
yeah, it was either there or LA. And I was like, I've seen friends go to LA and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And I wanted
And you probably need a car.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
I had a car, but I was
okay.
I want to get out of my bubble. I think there's a bubble that happens, especially with Asian Americans in California, that they don't risk. They don't know how to take risks, right? For what they love, for their dreams. And so for me, it was like really important for my own character growth to leave everything I knew, leave the comforts of home and my family and community, and just go for it and see where it would take me.
Okay. Mm-hmm. How much did Craigslist factor into your move to New York? I have to mention Craigslist because it is also a San Francisco story.
Oh, I love Craigslist. Yeah, I sold a lot of things on Craigslist.
Mm-hmm. I have a theory that when you're on Craigslist a lot, it's because you're in the midst of some sort of change, some sort of upheaval. True. And they're usually there for you.
100%.
Whether you're like trying to sell shit or find a place to live
Find
or find
an
a job or whatever it is. Yes, Craigslist has been a friend to a lot of us.
But now it's Facebook, because now they have Facebook Marketplace.
Right.
It's different. So then I did look on Craigslist for roommates because I couldn't afford anything.
Sure.
But because of Facebook, I actually found someone who I had done a theater thing with. We had like mutual friends, and I moved in with her.
Okay.
Yeah.
What part of New York?
Harlem.
Okay.
West Harlem.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
No, actually, East Harlem. Yeah.
Upper.
125th.
Way up there. Yeah. Okay. And do you want to talk about your time in New York?
Oh, yeah. It was epic. It was everything everyone says New York is. I learned a lot. I grew the fuck up. Oh, sorry. Can I swear?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Please do. Honesty is what I call it.
I grew the fuck up. I got out of my comfort zone. I did laundry in the snow. Like, having to carry your dirty clothes through like 3 blocks of snow definitely builds character.
Especially for people who don't grow up in snow.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, what's this?
I realized very fast I hate winter. I'm definitely a California girl.
Yeah.
And so, I auditioned. I worked as a waitress, a bartender. I worked for a developer. I did all the things.
What kind of things were you auditioning for?
Oh, everything.
Shows,
from
movies,
commercials, not Broadway. I knew I couldn't dance or sing. I mean, we already covered that. But mostly commercials, shows. Like I got on to New Amsterdam, Law and Order. I think those are like.
You've been in a Law and Order?
Yeah,
oh shit!
dozens of times.
You might be my first guest.
Really?
Well, the thing about Law and Order is you watch it and you're like, oh, that's everyone.
Yes.
Has been in Law and Order, but I think you might be the first.
A dozen times. Yeah. They just would call me and be like, we need a nurse. We need a court
lines?
reporter. I had like 1 or 2 lines, but did it ever make it? I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Probably not.
Are you in the credits?
I was for New Amsterdam.
Do you have an IMDb page?
Yes, I do.
Oh my gosh. This is great. I don't think you're the first person on this show with an IMDb page, but I think you are the first person to be on Law and Order.
It's just something that happens.
Now I feel like I made it.
Yeah. Well, as an actor in New York, everyone is on Law and Order. It's just a matter of time before you're on Law
There's
and
also
Order.
a bajillion between all the like franchises.
Exactly.
Episodes.
Exactly.
Like I think regular Law and Order is in like their 30th season. Or
of
something
course.
Insane.
Yeah, and they still have like some of the original characters. Well, now they're executive producers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Anything else in your New York time before?
Oh yeah, I was in this really weird industrial sitcom that filmed 60 episodes, 60. Yeah, 30-minute episodes.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I was one of the lead characters, and they filmed it, and now they use it all over the world in 28 different countries, teaching people how to speak English.
Okay.
For a company called Wall Street English.
Okay.
And so in 2018, I got to go around the world and meet my fans. And apparently I'm a big deal in China.
Yes, I love it.
So I have like billboards of me. I have like
Whoa.
cardboard cutouts of me in the malls. Yeah, like I went to the bathroom at the mall during my tour and someone recognized me. And then everyone in the bathroom like wanted my autograph.
Like bananas.
It was crazy.
Do you have a stage name or just use your...
Nicole Mashali
Okay.
is my stage name.
Yeah. So that's how people know you.
Yes.
Around the world. This
Around
is
Dubai,
nuts.
Italy, Thailand. Yeah, it's crazy. France.
Fun.
Yeah.
And so how long did you end up living in New York? I mean, you're traveling and stuff, but like living, how long did you?
Almost a decade.
Okay.
From 2011, 2012 to the pandemic.
I was going to guess.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So is that why you came back?
There was a number of reasons. One of the biggest reasons was I was done with New York. I think I had been demystified about the whole like Hollywood success story thing. In my 20s and 30s, it was all about like getting the gigs and being a big name and doing the corporate artist thing, which I think is sort of normal for most people that go into acting and directing and film and Hollywood. And then by the end of it, I was like, why am I hustling and working so hard for something that was not meant for me?
And going back to your dad's advice.
Yeah.
It's the man.
Stop working for the man. Stop working. Why am I going to make these people money when they don't care about me? I have literally been on set in like big productions, and I've heard directors say actors are just cattle. And when
at least they're honest, I guess.
But it's horrible.
It's
It's just like, I think it shows what, like, even the studio heads think about people.
Yeah.
Like,
it's very capitalist way to think about people.
It's very capitalist. They're replaceable.
Right.
You know, and it doesn't even matter if it's an extra or a big name lead actress or actor. Mm-hmm. They're replaceable. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's like, why am I going to continue to feed this machine? And so I wanted to move. My husband didn't want to move because he had just moved to New York to be with me. And so
he's like, really?
Yeah, he was like, I just got here. It's so epic. And it was epic. I had the most epic adventures in New York I've ever had in my entire life.
Okay.
And I learned a lot, but at the end of it, I was like, I want to go home. I want to be with my family. And the pandemic just like magnified that to 1,000. And it was like, we don't know how long. It was like why I left California. It came back full circle, and it was like, we don't know how long we have to live if this pandemic sweeps through this country and gets to our parents. We don't know if we're going to be alive in 3 months.
Well, and not to bring up an also terrible topic, but I think I sometimes forget it wasn't just the pandemic. It was like the 4 years of the last president.
Yes.
Like everything was already upside down.
Yes.
And then it went upside down.
Yes.
So
it was just all the things. And so lockdown, just like, we were just in our thoughts.
Was it obvious, you knew you needed to leave New York. Was it obvious that you wanted to come back to the Bay/SF?
It was either there or overseas.
Okay.
I was like, if it's not, because again, Trump was president, and I was like, hey, maybe I'm done with this country right now.
Right.
If he does another 4 years, I don't think I can stand it.
We're recording this, by the way, before we know the answer.
Right before.
It's going to come out after.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, sending good vibes.
If I have it in me to be like, publish.
So I might be in another country by the time this comes out.
Shit, I might be in another country.
We all might be.
I'm a cis white straight man. Okay, so it was either overseas. You're saying because of those 4 years, or here, and so what made your mind up about that?
Oh, so what made my mind up? My husband got COVID.
Oh, early?
He was one of the first people. He got it the same day as Tom Hanks.
In New York?
Yeah.
Where it was really bad really early in New York.
Where the freezer trucks were outside hospitals. Oh my God. Like, bodies were, piling up. And so the doctors, we would call and they would be like, don't come here unless you're dying. Are you dying? Then don't come here. And he thought he was dying. Like, it was a really bad strain of COVID, that first one. I didn't get it because I had all these masks left over from when I was touring Asia for that Wall Street English thing. So I had a ton of masks left over, and I literally would wear a mask every day taking care of him. And this is before they even told us to wear a mask.
Wow.
Yeah, then they were like, oh, it's just through contact, And so I wore a mask. I didn't get it because I did that. And he finally recovered, but I remember thinking, oh my God, if one of our parents gets this, they may not recover. We should go back because we don't know.
Are his parents, is he from here as well?
We're both from California, so his parents are in LA.
Okay.
And my parents were here, or my mom was here. And so we literally got on one of the last flights before they grounded.
Oh, wow. So in March.
Yeah, March, like beginning April. And so I remember it was just us and like 2 other families on the airplane.
Wow.
There was like no one in the airport.
It's such like not to trivialize or belittle it, but it just feels now like a movie.
Yeah.
Everything was so surreal.
It was so surreal. Yeah. We literally just packed 2 suitcases, and I was like, if we have to leave our personal belongings to see our family again, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like,
did your husband ever have to go to the hospital, or
no?
He was able to recover enough at home. Okay, good. Yeah. I'm glad for the record.
Yeah, but now he has long COVID.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Shit.
So now he he doesn't have the same lung capacity as before COVID.
Fuck, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. And now, I feel like it also kind of, he was undiagnosed ADHD. Now it's way worse.
It exacerbated his ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So now he's on medication for that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so you're back.
So we come back and I'm like, okay, let's just take this time to regroup, reground. Nothing's happening in the world. There's no jobs for me as an artist. Like, no one's shooting anything, or they shouldn't be shooting anything.
Right.
So I literally took the time to meditate, hike. And during this time, I'm also like doing lockdown at my mom's house. He's at his parents' house in LA, and I clean. You know, I'm like, my husband jokes that I'm OCD. I don't think I am, but I'm just a very clean person. When my parents divorced, that was the only thing that I can control. So
I'm staying out of that argument for the record.
I would color code all of my clothes at like 7 years old, 6 years old.
He might be right.
Yeah. So that's how I deal with like trauma and with conflict and stress. And so I cleaned my mom's garage. I would just like clean, go through all her boxes. During that time, I found a file cabinet with all my grandma's letters.
Oh, wow.
In it was like a letter about her time in the brothel.
Oh, wow.
In it was like all these things she had done that I had no idea. She also wrote about her ancestors and finding out that her ancestor was a Muslim chieftain,
oh, wow.
Datu Biru, who owned land, who owned a lot of land in Mindanao. And so her father ended up like acquiring that land and became the mayor of Dipolog in Mindanao. Like all these things. He had the first piano shipped to him from Europe. Like, they were wealthy.
And are these things that your mom didn't necessarily know?
She didn't tell me. Or maybe she knew, but like...
But it's how you learned all this stuff.
I learned
your
it from...
grandmother's
her
writing,
letters.
Her letters.
It was, like, insane the amount of things and documents. Like, the state assembly named my grandma the first Filipino-American to, you know, do all this, like... activism and cultural work here in San Francisco.
The state assembly in California.
Yes.
Okay.
So she was recognized by Mayor Willie Brown, like all of these things. I found like newspaper clippings of her with another person who helped during World War II against the Japanese. It was like all these things I had never known. And then also my uncle, Patrick Salaver, my other uncle, Tim, was finding all these documentation about him and his work in the civil rights activism work with Third World Liberation Front.
Here in the city?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here in the city. So while I was like finding all this stuff about my grandma, my other uncle was finding out about all this stuff about my Uncle Pat, who's like the eldest of their family.
I just realized we know your uncle's name. I don't think we've said your grandmother's name.
Estrella Chavez.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And she was a big deal badass.
Yeah. And, like, I kind of knew that growing up, but I didn't know the extent. Like...
And even if you were told as a kid, you might not have retained it or cared, and then now you're at a point in your life where you're like, oh,
wow.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, this is all documented.
I come from this.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, learning
So that's how you
this,
spent lockdown.
Yeah. Uncovering all these family, like,
yeah.
And so now soaking this in as, at the time I think it was like 42, as a 42-year-old adult, it's different context. And it, to me, it now is like, oh, what am I leaving for the future? My grandparents did this thing. My uncle did this thing. Now, what am I doing for the future generations? And then, bam, I get pregnant.
Okay.
And at the time, you know, we had been trying for 2 years, but I really, like, was like, oh, my gosh. Like, we were trying, but I didn't really, like... plan this, like, money-wise.
Yeah, it's also like the reality when realities actually set in. It could be a thing that you overthink.
Exactly.
And then it happens and you're like, wait, oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like,
this is 2022, you said?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
2021, I got pregnant.
Okay.
So it was on 8/8/2021.
Oh.
He was conceived because I threw a fundraising event for the local nonprofits in the Soma, because I had moved back during pandemic, and I said, I want to do something after I found my grandma's letters. I want to do something for the nonprofits in Soma. So I said, I love producing events, and I'm really connected to different Filipino artists. Let's produce an event at Kapwa Gardens.
Okay.
So I produced an event called Kapwa Cares.
This was you on your own?
Yes.
Okay.
On my own. I was like, let me
Please
just do
go
this
on.
thing for the community and let people know I'm back in the Bay Area. Because a lot of people would see me around the community and be like, are you here? Like, are you in New York? So I was like, let me do this for the community so people know. I got all my friends together to perform, raised money. I think we raised like $4,000. I paid for everything on my own, like venue, tech, everything. And then also had Kapwa Gardens come in and help with it. But all the money I got from that event, I donated back to Bindlestiff, Soma Filipinas, I think, and Cultivate Labs.
Which is where we are, by the way.
And so that night, we had AJ Raphael perform. He's like a huge deal in the Filipino community. And after that, we went out to eat and drink with our artists that came up from LA and Portland. Rex Navarrete was another one. And he got us drunk, basically. We got shit-faced at AJ Raphael. He got us drunk. And that night, we conceived my son.
Ah. Okay.
And we named him after AJ Raphael.
Amazing. Yeah. It's only appropriate.
Yeah. So every time I tell AJ that story, he's like, it's kind of weird, but thank you.
AJ, the adult.
The singer, yeah.
The adult. Okay. Your kid's too young to know.
Yeah.
You'll tell him eventually. Yeah.
But he was conceived on 8/8/2021.
Okay, and 8's a good number.
88 is a crazy good number, especially in Chinese and Asian culture. It's very auspicious.
I have a white friend whose kid was born on 8/8/8.
Oh, ooh.
And I'm like, whoa, okay.
That's really good, yeah. And so he was conceived, and then I was like, oh shit, I need a job. And I was like, okay, I guess I could do tech. I could, apply for Google and all these things, but then, because I wanted to work remote. But then I saw the position for Cultivate Labs open. Okay. And I saw Desi, my current boss, at an event for Bindlestiff for Alamanala and Tongue in the Moon. And I was like, oh, is this position still open? And he was like, actually, it is. We've been looking for months. You should apply. And Marissa was my really, really good friend who runs Kapwa Gardens. And she was like, apply.
And what was the job?
Program manager at Bly Creative.
Okay.
And it was everything I had in my wheelhouse. Community, fundraising. I'd worked in nonprofit before I lived in New York for like 10, 15 years. I've raised millions of dollars for nonprofits. And so managing events. We do a lot of events here at Cultivate Labs, helping artists with their work, supporting artists with grants, with spaces. And one of my ideas was starting a podcast to help amplify their stories. And so we did a podcast.
Let's hear about it. You're still doing it?
Yes, we're still doing it. We just reached 5,000.
5,000
downloads, listeners.
Oh,
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say episodes, and I was going to have to stop this recording and just leave.
We have about 40 episodes.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 seasons.
Well, it's not totally unlike the stuff you were doing as a kid, and just you're obviously comfortable with mics and cameras and stuff. So, but what? Let's talk about your podcast.
So I started it because one, a lot of times when you go to NPR or like the mainstream podcast, you don't hear a lot of Southeast Asian stories. Or Filipino American stories. And so I told my boss, I said, we have a unique opportunity to not only help the artists with their art, but create a platform for their stories to be amplified, for their art to be amplified.
I relate.
Exactly.
But this is very specific.
Yeah, it's very specific because there were Filipino American podcasts. I'm not going to say there wasn't before us. There's definitely different Filipino American podcasts. But I feel like we sort of dive a little deeper. And I think my intention was to highlight the folks in my community, Kapwa, and also people that I look up to and am inspired by who push the culture forward with that specific intention. So there's definitely Filipino Americans doing a lot of great things, but like, who are those people that are doing intentionally, right? Not just like the whole corporate, am I going to get money? Do I have clout? Am I going to get famous from this?
But it's going to get me somewhere else.
Exactly. Yeah. But who have the mindset of, is this helping my culture, my community?
Okay.
Come up, like crabs out of the barrel. Let's like break the barrel.
Yeah. I love that. What is the podcast called, and where can folks listen to it?
It's Cultural Cultivators. So cultivators with a K, because our whole thing is Cultivate Labs with a K. And so it's called Cultural Cultivators. Find on Instagram, cultural.cultivators, cultivators with a K, or through my production company, Kindred Kapwa.
Okay, and they can listen on all the platforms.
Yeah,
and
everything.
All that.
Spotify, Google. We have platforms we don't even know we're platforms.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's platforms out there that just grab podcasts.
Yeah.
Like, people will be like, I heard your podcast on la-da-da, and I'm like, great.
Yeah, we get the reports, and it's like the percentage of like where people listen. I'm like, I didn't even know this was a platform.
Yeah.
I don't even know what this is. Yeah.
So, couple things I want to kind of wrap up on. Anything interesting that you want to tell? I know we've already touched on the election, and I don't know about you. It took everything for me to even book yours. I'm doing another one this week because these are coming out after the election. But do you have the headspace to talk about anything that might be coming up?
People can still follow me, though, Kindred Kapwa, and see what I'm doing. I'm doing a movie on my uncle, a documentary.
On Patrick Salaver.
Yeah, on Patrick Salaver. And why folks need to know about him is because he helped with the Third World Liberation Front, helped develop the very first School of Ethnic Studies. And so any person that's taken African American studies or Asian American studies or, Latinx or Latino American studies, like they did that because of people like my uncle who sacrificed his own freedom. He went to federal prison because he was targeted by the FBI's counterintelligence program and the work that he did.
That just tells me he's doing something right.
Exactly. And so I feel like his story needs to be amplified and people get to know that we have Asian American heroes that were silenced by the government. And I want that story to go out next year.
Right on. And you're making that movie?
I am.
Okay, and folks can follow you, you've already said.
Yeah.
So every season on my show, and we'll end with this, I have a theme. The theme for this season, which is season 7, is Keep It Local. We've definitely talked about that.
Yeah.
It's like every time I do this, it's like we've talked about my theme this whole hour. But I guess directly, if you will, please respond to that and what it means to you to keep it local.
Well, I don't know if I showed you this.
I will describe what Nicole is showing me.
But I have an SF tattoo on my forearm.
Yeah, yep.
So no matter where I go, I keep it local.
Yeah.
And to me, that means like what I've been saying this whole hour, Kapwa, this idea of shared humanity, of interconnectedness. And I feel like growing up by my hippie dad and even my mother and having my ancestors with me, I have this idea of keeping it local, meaning keeping it for the community by the community. And so for me, it means being accountable to the community and also rooting back to that intention of Kapwa and knowing don't deviate too far from that. Right. And so wherever I go, even if the universe takes me across to the other side of the world,
in China.
Yeah, I root back to. I look at my tattoo, my SF tattoo, which is the Giants logo, and I remember like I'm doing this for me, for my ancestors, and for my community, and I bleed black and orange.
That was Nicole Salaver. We'll be taking next week off for the holiday, but check back later this week to hear from Jacob Rosenberg, whose new photo book, Right Before My Eyes, chronicles the skateboarding and hip-hop scenes in the Bay Area between 1988 and 1998. This bonus episode will be available this Thursday, wherever you get podcasts. Music for Storied San Francisco was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Our contributing producer is Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 7th season, we have more than 220 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If possible, please, please, please rate and review the show. I want to know what you think. Follow us on Instagram and Threads at StoriedSF and reach out to us there or email us at storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Be extra careful crossing the street and keep being wacky, creative, and kind out there. See you next time on Storied San Francisco. We acknowledge and respect the first humans of the unceded land we call San Francisco, the Ramaytush Ohlone. We condemn the genocide of these and other tribes across the Western Hemisphere. We honor their legacy and history, and we support rematriation and sovereignty efforts.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcasts.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.